When you think about mummies, your mind goes to Egypt with pyramids, pharaohs, and desert sands. But not that long ago, there was a mummy in a small town in Ohio, which garnered a lot of attention for over 3 decades. The story begins in 1929 when an African American man in his mid to late 40s was found dead from natural causes in a ditch by the side of the road near Sabina. Sabina is a small, mainly agricultural town. It appeared he was alone and no identification was found on his body. It was believed he was a wanderer in search of work. Several people said they had seen him walking through the town the day before and that he looked ill. After searching his body, the only items found in his pockets were $1.40 and a note with the address 1118 Yale Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio. Local investigators traveled to Cincinnati only to find an empty lot. They talked to the locals but came up with no name, but one of the neighbors was named Eugene, and somehow that name was transferred over to the dead man. That Eugene must have felt weird knowing his name was attached to a corpse. The body was brought to Sabina's Littleton funeral home and embalmed. In an attempt to see if anybody had any more information on the deceased man, they put the mummified man in a brick shed close to a nearby bus stop so that any passerbys could try to identify the body. A 30-day period of viewing passed, but no information was discovered. The Littleton family could not give up on finding the man's identity, so Eugene became an unofficial citizen of Sabina. In the late 1920s, somehow having an embalmed body on display in a shed by a funeral home didn't strike people as that strange. Over time, Eugene became somewhat of the town mascot. He would stay on a comfy couch and was dusted and cleaned, and when his clothes got moth-eaten, he'd get a new suit. Eventually, Eugene became the target of pranks and tricks, like putting him in different places in the town or stealing his gold teeth. Word spread and Eugene grew to be a local legend. It is estimated that over 1.5 million people would stop to view the mummified corpse. The local paper had an interview with a woman who spent time with Eugene when she was a little girl.
My sister and I used to visit our great-aunt in Sabina. She lived across the street from the Littleton funeral home. We played with the little girl who lived at the home. We used to play with her near the coffins and were always fascinated by the body on display out in a small brick building in the yard. Eugene was what they called him. His body was laid out on a platform behind bars so we couldn't touch him. We were children and didn't think much about why he was there. But we made many visits to see him. I remember staring at him for long periods of time because he was just so interesting to look at. We didn't fully understand what death was and we didn't have much to do. Also, where else could you go to look at a dead body up close?
One prank would take Eugene to Columbus, Ohio, almost an hour's drive away from Sabina, with him ending up sitting on a bench on the campus of Ohio State University.
Eugene was a famous figure back then, especially at Halloween. He often appeared on the front porches of homes with a little help from his friends, and terrorized more than a few houses. Some of his fingers were missing, but he was kept well dressed in his black suit and had a rather serene look of composure on his face. I used to spend a few minutes of each visit talking to him and asking him questions like where he came from and if he had a family. As expected, no communication was established, but I did attempt to comfort him with a prayer for his soul and his loved ones at the end of each visit.
Finally, the tricks and pranks became too much, and it was decided that Eugene needed a final resting place. A plot in the local cemetery was bought and a stone was inscribed with the text, Eugene, found dead, 1928, buried, 1964. the local paper said,
It was a simple but dignified committal service and was the concluding chapter of 35 years of mystery.
Eugene the Mummy Man had finally found his place to spend eternity. To this day, nobody truly knows his name or where he came from.